Now, go to the movies these days and you'll find the fourth of the Scream horror series in which the mass murderer terrorises the usual innocent people. Have a look at the financial markets and you'll find Scream 4 is playing there as well, as voters in Finland gave huge gains to a nationalist party which does not want any more bailouts of Eurozone countries. Markets certainly scream just as Portugal begins discussions on its bailout and Spain faces higher interest rates on its debt. The prospect of a Greek default completes the horror. What future now for European solidarity? Our economics editor Paul Mason reports.
I'm going out in the world to save our planet, and I ain't coming back until she's saved.
This is the Finland you thought you knew. Clean, green, wholesome, the second most stable country in the world, after Norway. But not anymore. This morning's newspapers told the story of a stunning breakthrough by the True Finns, a right-wing populist party who scored 19% and looks set to enter coalition government with a new message for Europe.
We shall renegotiate with the European Union, and I think there will be a bunch of new suggestions, and we have also something to say, and we will be in those negotiations if we are in the government. And something new is going to happen, and that's very good because these bailouts clearly hasn't been working.
The True Finns' victory crystallises a growing phenomenon in Europe, the rise of the right. There's the French National Front, currently at 20% in the polls, the Dutch Freedom Party, the Danish People's Party, each at 15%. And the demographics of the shock in Finland follow a familiar pattern.
There has been earlier some research about the typical voters of True Finns, and it seems that they are not typical. There are right-wingers, but there are at the same time people who previously might have been voting for left-wing parties, disillusioned trade unionists.
The True Finns manifesto promised to slash overseas aid, end the compulsory teaching of Swedish in what up to now has been an officially bilingual country, end net transfers to the EU, and on immigration, faster processing of asylum seekers, the dispersal of what it calls ghettos, and for migrants to respect Finnish customs. The North European right has, until now, grown by campaigning against the euro currency, against increased migration, and by holding what it sees as a cultural line against political Islam. Now, though, a section of the North European electorate is animated by something much more fundamental: the bailouts. Because in Eurovision terms, some countries are sticking to their stereotypes. This is Portugal's entry. To tighten the belt is futile. The struggle is joy, say the lyrics. And on the streets of southern Europe, life imitates art. Here, the Eurovision songsters lead a mass demo of real Portuguese workers. The government there fell when it failed to push through an austerity package. But while the politicians are in Brussels, the people are on the streets, rejecting austerity just as vehemently as the Finns are demanding it.
The European elite gambled on two major factors when they forged the single European currency. One was that the economic forces could be kept in check, and the second one was that national democracies could be contained, could be managed. What we're seeing now is that both those gambles turn out to be very ill-judged.
The EU is one big machine for transferring money from the rich north to the poor south. There are 283 billion euros worth of transfers scheduled between 2007 and 2013 under the so-called convergence objective. Another 250 billion euros were spent in the first 6 years of the century. While most of that money goes to Eastern Europe, Portugal and Greece remain eligible, together with regions of Italy and Spain. As the financial crisis hit, the EU then created a 440 billion euro bailout fund, with Germany alone contributing 120 billion and France 90. Finland's 8 billion is still over €1,000 per person.
These are untested waters. We do not know to what extent taxpayers in richer member states can be convinced to pay for citizens in poorer ones. We do not know whether poorer citizens and the electorate, the national parliaments in some of these weaker economies, will put up with EU-backed austerity measures.
The pressure point is Greece, edging towards a debt default, while on the streets, low-level mayhem. This protest about a landfill site, showing what it might be like if Southern Europe's people decided to award nul point to the whole deal. The danger for the European project is clear, that the social deal at the heart of it, the North paying for the development of the South, falls apart. And the danger for the European political elite is acute, that it can neither see this coming nor understand why it's happening. As with Eurovision, the voters are proving a bit factional, a bit stereotypical, and a bit unpredictable.
Paul Mason there. I'm joined now in the studio by Katinka Barış from the Centre for European Reform, and from Brussels by the Portuguese former MEP Paulo Casaca and the Conservative MEP Daniel Hannan. Mr. Casaca, is this message pretty clear from Finland? The voters there are saying, you know, we Northern Europeans are fed up bailing out other people, particularly in the south, Portugal, for example.
Well, good evening. I think that this view of bailout, like sort of subvention to the South, is absolutely ridiculous. This is a loan that actually is has been made at very high rates, actually the double of what the IMF uses in similar circumstances with countries that are not in a monetary union. And therefore, I think that the whole of this noise does not have substance.
Let me bring in Daniel Hannan standing. Sorry to interrupt. Let me bring in Daniel Hannan next to you. I mean, it's not a bailout, it's a loan, it will be repaid, it's a reasonable thing for friends to do, certainly within the EU.
Well, it seems very unlikely that it's going to be repaid, as we've seen from the news from Greece today. But Paolo does make a very important point. I mean, the one thing you don't do to help an indebted friend is to press more high-interest loans on him. And it's very important that we don't think of this as helping Portugal. It really isn't helping Portugal. The bailout money is going to go to European bankers and bondholders. The repayment is going to come from ordinary Portuguese taxpayers. I'm enormously and sentimentally Lusophile. About the only country we've never fallen out with in Europe in our long and bellicose history. If I thought that this was the way to help them, I'd be all for it. But this is not about rescuing Portugal.
What is the way to help?
Rescuing the euro.
What is the way to help Portugal? I mean, would you like to see them out of the euro?
Yes, I think that the countries on the periphery of the eurozone have been wrecked by having the wrong interest rates and the wrong exchange rates. I think they desperately need to price themselves into the market. It's what would happen in any other situation if there were not a monetary union. It's the difference, if you like, between Britain and Ireland. We were able to devalue, and it's the one thing that's kept us ticking over. Ireland has been trapped with this artificially high exchange rate, and having been wrecked by having artificially low interest rates during the boom years, now, of course, is getting the hike in interest rates from the ECB.
Let me put that to Paulo Casaca. It would be better for you if you were outside the euro, and this comes from somebody who loves your country.
No, well, I really appreciate the words, and but I have to say I disagree, especially your comparison between Ireland and England and the United Kingdom is very good, because the fact is, and the Chancellor of the United Kingdom remembered this just after the announcement of the bailout for Portugal, that, the United Kingdom is not out of these problems. Of course, conditions are different, and to a large extent I would say that you are right, that we must understand that to keep a monetary union, we must have more important measures to replace the devaluation that does not exist anymore.
Right.
This is possible, this is feasible, but we have to do it, and it's not done, and it's not on the table.
Let me bring in Katinka Barış here in the studio. I mean, is this changing the nature of the European Union? I mean, we heard Daniel Hannan say it's actually about bailing out the euro rather than about bailing out Portugal. Is this resentment in the north, which you also know is true in Germany too, in a different way, perhaps expressed in a different way, is that something that's going to be the future for us?
It is definitely changing the nature of the European Union, or perhaps more precisely, it is revealing the nature of the European Union, because up to now it was very easy for the Europeans to always make big statements on the assumption that what we want is an ever closer union and everything is based on solidarity and friendship. And that was never tested. And this is arguably the first big test of whether the solidarity in the European Union is actually there. And we're just finding that, well, you know, to some extent it is, because these rescue mechanisms are being set up, and we have changed the way the European Central Bank works, and actually the whole way the euro works has changed fundamentally. So in a way it's there, but we've done it grudgingly.
But have you done it, I want to come back to the two in Brussels in a second, but that's a matter for the elites, isn't it? When you ask the electorate in Finland, you see what happens, a big swing to a party that says, no, we don't want to do it. And you know there's a popular upswell in Germany itself saying, we're fed up, we pay our taxes, why should it go to Greece, for example?
Absolutely. What the people in these countries muddle up, I think, is that they believe that at the moment there's already real taxpayers' euro going from the north to the south. Of course, that is not the case. These are loans, and it's just been pointed out, they are actually given at advantageous interest rates to the countries that make the loans. However, they could, of course, one day turn into real cash flow, and this is what people are afraid of.
Daniel, what do you make of that point, and that we are rewriting also the very nature of the union itself?
Yeah, well, do you know what? We're not even bothering to rewrite it. We're just acting contrary to the rules. I mean, a point that cannot be stressed too often is that these bailouts are utterly illegal, by which I don't just mean that there is no provision for them in the treaties. I mean that they are expressly prohibited by the no bailout clause. And so we're doing something that is damaging to Portugal and Greece and the other recipients, damaging to the taxpayers of the contributing countries, and against the EU's own rules, in order to keep this project going. And there comes a point when you just say, you know, the price is too high and there has to be a reckoning.
Paolo Casaca, do you think that...
Well, I think that...
About that, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that that has been the case many times in the European history, that facts are ahead of legislation, and this is why Germany insisted this should be only a provisional mechanism, cannot be a definite mechanism. But the true issue is not the legal one, is the logic. And the logic of the system shows us that we must find something more than the control of the public finances. The control of the public finances is a very important issue, but we must as well look at the external deficits, and also at the growth rates of the countries. And we have to control all of this together to ensure that this type of situations will not happen.
But let me sorry to interrupt. I just want to give one final word to Katinka Barish here. I mean, do you think that the future also holds that a lot of voters, when they're asked in various tests of domestic public opinion, will vote in a way which suggests that these Finnish voters are onto something here, that there is more resentment among the richer northern countries about this?
This is, as far as I can remember, the biggest crisis the Euro and the European Union has been in. It would be very surprising if this went smoothly and people didn't register their concern and their fears. This is something that looks out of control. People don't know where this is going. Even the markets don't know, the economists don't know. People react to this, of course. Are we ultimately going to find a solution? I think it's highly probable, because we have done many things that looked a few months ago still impossible. And I think we will muddle through, at least for a few years.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.